I left the government because we are in the fight of our lives against nationalism, and it is a fight that we are currently losing. Unless we change course, we risk handing the keys of number 10 to reform, and I do not want that on our consciences. For the first time in our history, nationalists are in power in every corner of the United Kingdom. Scottish and Welsh nationalism represents an existential threat to the future integrity of the United Kingdom. And Reform UK represent a threat to the values and ideals that have made this country great.
The UK's Labour Party is now gripped by what looks like a full-blown civil war, as Keir Starmer suddenly finds himself facing open revolt from inside his own top team and the wider parliamentary ranks. In a dramatic Commons intervention, former Health Secretary Wes Streeting has warned that the country faces an existential threat, making clear that his resignation was meant as a direct alarm bell about the party's current direction. Streeting says Labour is losing the fight of its life against nationalism across the UK, dropping a political bombshell by accusing his own leadership of failing to confront a tide that now reaches Scotland, Wales, and England. After bruising local election results, senior figures privately fear that Reform UK could end up handed the keys to number 10, and Streeting's speech turns that private anxiety into a very public warning. Invoking what he calls rebellious hope, Streeting vows that the fight for Labour's soul is only just beginning, casting his resignation not as an exit from the stage but as the opening shot in a longer struggle. And as ministers peel away and Labour's polling slides, every line of his attack speech sounds like preparation for a leadership challenge, with Wes Streeting positioning himself as the man ready to topple Starmer and change course.
I left the government because we are in the fight of our lives against nationalism, and it is a fight that we are currently losing. Unless we change course, we risk handing the keys of number 10 to reform, and I do not want that on our consciences. For the first time in our history, nationalists are in power in every corner of the United Kingdom. Scottish and Welsh nationalism represents an existential threat to the future integrity of the United Kingdom. And Reform UK represent a threat to the values and ideals that have made this country great. It is our responsibility to defend that promise and the values it represents, not just for the NHS or even for the survival of this government, but to win the battles we thought that were long since won, of progressives against reactionaries, of patriots versus nationalists, of hope over hate. That is our fight. It's Andy Burnham's fight in Makerfield, and it is Labour's fight for the soul of our country. For too long, and for too often, patriotism in Britain has been left to the loudest voices and the narrowest arguments, as though love of country belongs to one tribe, one party, or one point of view. But the Britain I believe in is bigger than that, because patriotism is not about who you exclude. It is about who you stand beside. It is not rooted in fear of change or suspicion of difference. It is rooted in solidarity, in the belief that we rise or fall together. That is the best of our country's story. When I gave my maiden speech 11 years ago, I argued that none of the problems facing our country would be solved by leaving the European Union. Today, in the dangerous and volatile world we find ourselves in, dominated by an unpredictable superpower in the USA, a rising superpower in China, and a failed superpower in Russia, it is even more clear that we would have been better off leading Europe than leaving the European Union. Not despite our sovereignty and the need to control our borders, but to enable those things. This is why I argue for a new special relationship. It is also why I welcome the assurances that the government is strengthening sanctions on Russia to underline our rock-solid support that we have given President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. Of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, NATO's Secretary-General is right to warn today that our alliance has an unhealthy reliance on one ally. We need to invest more heavily in our defence and more rapidly. I know my right honourable friend, the Defence Secretary, and his team do not need persuading on this, nor do they need lectures from the Conservative Party, who ran down our capability and now have the audacity to heckle from the sidelines like the arsonist complaining that the fire brigade hasn't turned up fast enough. I'm with the Secretary of State and his team all the way. But we also, he says, the Shadow Secretary of State says bankrupting the country. I think he's thinking about Liz Truss and the joyride that no doubt he was cheering on. I think a period of silence or at least an apology might be welcome from the Conservative front bench. Never waste a minute. That's been my mantra in government, and it's why I don't believe our party has time to waste in government treading water. Because the thing about emergencies is that they make the impossible possible. Look back at the crises we've confronted. We couldn't vaccinate against the deadly virus until we could. We couldn't nationalise the banking system until we could. We couldn't reorient our entire manufacturing base towards building aircraft until we could. We couldn't build hundreds of thousands of homes fit for heroes until we could. In times of greatest peril, our country has been capable of doing big things. We still can. Britain used to punch above its weight in the world. We still can. Each generation used to provide a better future for the next. We still can. Another member of the Cancer Club, the late great bowel babe, Dame Deborah James, famously said, "Take risks, love deeply, have no regrets, and always, always have rebellious hope." It is with that in mind, and with the belief that we can and must do better, with deep love for my party and my country, with no regrets, and with rebellious hope, that I have left the government. The Labour Party was elected to deliver real change. We still can.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.